The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumbling sound. Commander Yuki walked through them first, her black military boots clicking against the polished metal floor. Behind her came Lieutenant Minho and Captain Jiwon, both wearing their best human uniforms. The three humans looked very small in the enormous room. The chamber was built for giants. Tall ceilings stretched up into darkness above them. 12 different alien species sat in curved rows that rose high like a mountain. Each species had their own section with special chairs and breathing equipment. The air smelled strange, mixing 12 different world atmospheres into something that made human noses wrinkle. Yuki stopped in the center of the chamber floor. A bright spotlight shined down on her and her two officers. Around them, hundreds of alien eyes watched from the darkness. Some eyes glowed red, others were completely black. A few species had no visible eyes at all but still seemed to be looking right at them. "So these are the humans," said a voice that sounded like breaking glass. The words came from translation devices that all species wore in their ears. "They want to join our military alliance." Laughter filled the chamber. Not human laughter, but alien sounds that meant the same thing. Some aliens clicked their claws together. Others made deep rumbling noises in their throats. The floating lumina species created musical sounds that somehow felt mocking. High Regent BeforeThey stood up from his crystal chair. He was 3 times taller than Yuki and looked like he was made of living diamonds. His voice echoed through the chamber when he spoke. "Tell us, humans, what makes you think your species deserves to stand with the greatest warriors in the galaxy?" Yuki kept her face calm even though she felt angry inside. "We have proven ourselves in battle many times. Our ships defended the Outer Rim colonies when the Dark Fleet attacked. Human soldiers died protecting worlds that were not even our own." "Yes, yes," said Ambassador Lothak from the Keth section. He was covered in thick gray skin and had bones that could be seen underneath like armor. "We read your reports. You fought bravely with your little metal projectile weapons, your guns and missiles and bombs." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Captain Jiwon stepped forward, his hand moving toward his sidearm without thinking. Yuki caught his wrist and shook her head slightly. "Not yet." "But what happens," continued High Regent BeforeThey, "when those primitive weapons are taken away? What happens when you cannot hide behind your guns and your explosives? Can humans fight like real warriors?" A new voice joined the conversation. This one sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. This floated down from the Lumina section, her body glowing with soft blue light. Around her, gravity seemed to bend and twist. Small objects near her floated in the air. "True warriors master the forces of the universe itself," Thais said, her voice beautiful but cold. "We Lumina can control gravity with our minds. We need no weapons because we are weapons. The Kethtar are born with bones 3 times stronger than your strongest metals," added Ambassador Lothak, pounding his chest with a sound like hitting stone. "Our children break steel with their bare hands before they learn to walk." From the highest section came a grinding sound like rocks being crushed. "Vorthak exoskeletons can stop plasma bolts," rumbled another voice. "Our claws cut through ship hulls. We are living weapons that your ancestors could never have imagined." The chamber filled with agreement sounds from all 12 species. They had energy shields that could stop bullets. They had natural armor that made them nearly impossible to hurt. Some could fly without machines. Others could become invisible or walk through solid walls. Every species had something that made them special, something that made them superior to basic humans. Lieutenant Minho looked up at all the alien faces staring down at them. His jaw was tight with controlled anger. "Commander," he whispered, "should we show them our combat records from the Titan Wars?" "They have already seen our records," Yuki replied quietly. "They know we won battles that should have been impossible. But they think it was only because of our weapons." High Regent BeforeThey leaned forward in his crystal chair. The spotlight reflected off his diamond-like skin, sending rainbow colors across the chamber walls. "Your species built clever tools. We admit this. Your guns fire fast and your bombs explode with great force. But remove those tools and what remains? Soft skin that tears easily. weak bones that break under pressure, slow reflexes that cannot match our natural speed. "You are nothing but tool users," said Ambassador Lothak. "Take away the tools and you become helpless like babies." The words hit Yuki like physical blows, but she kept standing straight. Around the chamber, alien voices rose in agreement. They spoke about humans like they were not even in the room. They discussed human weaknesses as if they were examining insects under microscopes. "Humans have no natural weapons," said one voice. "Their planet gravity is weak, so they are weak," said another. "They cannot even see in the dark without machines. They need breathing equipment to survive in most atmospheres. They die from cold that would not bother a child of any real warrior species." Each comment brought more laughter. Each insult made the aliens feel more superior. They had invited humans to join their alliance, but only because they thought it would be amusing. They wanted to watch the weak tool users fail when their tools were taken away. Captain Jiwan stepped closer to Yuki. "Commander, we don't have to listen to this. We can report back to Earth Command that the alliance talks failed." But Yuki was studying the aliens with calm, calculating eyes. She watched how they moved, how they held themselves, how they showed their strength. These beings had lived for centuries without real challenges. Their natural abilities made them powerful, but they had never needed to truly adapt or overcome disadvantages. "Actually," Yuki said loudly enough for her voice to carry through the chamber, "I think a demonstration might be educational for everyone." The alien voices quieted. High Regent Vorthes tilted his diamond head curiously. "What kind of demonstration?" Yuki smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had been underestimated for far too long. "You want to know what humans are like without their tools. I propose we find out together." The Wei's chamber fell completely silent. Even the background hums and clicks of alien life support systems seemed to pause. Hundreds of eyes focused on the small human woman standing in the bright spotlight. "Are you challenging us, human?" asked High Regent Vorthes slowly. "I am offering to prove a point," Yuki replied. "You think removing our weapons makes us helpless? I think you're about to learn something very important about what humans really are underneath all those tools." The silence stretched longer. Then, gradually, alien laughter began to fill the chamber once again. But this time, it sounded different. This time it sounded like they were looking forward to watching something break. High Regent Vorthes stood up from his crystal throne, his diamond body catching the chamber lights and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. The laughter in the chamber slowly died down as he raised one massive crystalline hand for silence. "Very well, human," he said, his voice like grinding stone. "We shall give you this demonstration, but let us make it proper and fair." The alien regent gestured toward 3 sections of the chamber. From each section, a figure began to move down toward the central floor. Yuki watched them approach, her trained eye automatically assessing each potential opponent. The first was Kaleth, champion of the Vorthak species. He moved like liquid metal poured into a warrior's shape. His crystalline exoskeleton shifted and clicked with each step, the plates adjusting themselves for combat. When he reached the chamber floor, he stood nearly 10 feet tall. His 4 arms ended in claws that could punch through steel. His diamond-hard skin had never been pierced by any weapon in 300 years of battles. "Kaleth has won 4,000 duels," announced High Regent Vorthes proudly. "He has never been defeated in single combat. His carapace has deflected plasma cannon fire. His strength can crush metal like soft clay." The second figure floated, down rather than walked. Thais was a Lumina combat artist, her body seeming to be made of living light wrapped in translucent skin. Around her, gravity bent and twisted. Small pieces of debris from the chamber floor rose into the air and orbited her like tiny moons. Her movements were graceful and deadly, like a dancer who had learned to kill with physics itself. "This can manipulate gravitational fields within a 50-meter radius," came the musical voice of the Lumina ambassador. "She can make opponents too heavy to move or light enough to float helplessly. She fights without ever touching her enemies, crushing them with the weight of worlds or tearing them apart with gravitational shears." The third warrior made the floor shake with each step. Gorthak was a Kethtar berserker, standing 8 feet. tall and built like a mountain given arms and legs. His gray skin was thick as armor plating. Bones showed through his flesh like steel beams supporting a building. His hands could bend titanium bars. His skull could break through starship hulls. "Gorthak's bone density is 5 times greater than your strongest human materials," announced Ambassador Lothak with obvious pride. He once fought for 30 hours straight against an entire army. His bones have never been broken. His flesh has never been seriously wounded. He feels no pain and knows no fear. The 3 alien champions took positions around the chamber floor, forming a triangle. They moved with the confidence of beings who had never truly been challenged. Each one, alone, could probably defeat a dozen human soldiers armed with standard weapons. Yuki looked at her officers. Lieutenant Minho stepped forward immediately, his hand dropping to his empty holster out of habit. "Commander, let me take this fight. I've trained in zero-gravity combat and hostile environment warfare." "No," Yuki said quietly but firmly. "This isn't about our best fighter taking on their champions. This is about proving what any human can do when pushed to the edge." Captain Jiwan moved closer, concern clear in his voice. "Yuki, these aren't normal opponents. Look at them. Kaleth's armor could stop a tank shell. Theiss can change gravity itself. Gorthak has bones like starship hull metal. Even if you were armed..." "I know exactly what they are," Yuki interrupted, beginning to remove her military jacket. "But they don't know what I am. They see soft human skin and think weakness. They see small human size and think helplessness. They have no idea what humans become when everything else is stripped away." High Regent Vorthes leaned forward in his throne, clearly enjoying what he thought would be entertainment. "The terms are simple, human. No weapons of any kind, no technological assistance, no armor or protective equipment, simply natural ability. Against natural ability, you're one warrior against our 3 champions." Around the chamber, alien voices began placing bets on how quickly the fight would end. Most estimated less than 10 seconds. A few generous souls gave the human 30 seconds before complete defeat. "She cannot possibly harm Kaleth," clicked one Vorthak observer. "His exoskeleton is harder than diamond. Theiss will simply increase gravity around the human until she cannot move," sang a Lumina voice. "Then the demonstration will be over without any real violence." "Gorthak could end this with one punch," rumbled a Kethtar. "But perhaps he will be gentle and only break a few bones." The alien laughter started up again, but now it had a different quality. They were no longer just amused by human weakness. They were excited to watch it be demonstrated in the most brutal way possible. Yuki finished removing her jacket and boots, standing barefoot on the cold metal floor in her simple military uniform. She began stretching, rolling her shoulders, and loosening muscles that had been conditioned through decades of training that the aliens could not imagine. "Commander," whispered Minho, "these beings evolved as apex predators on their homeworlds. They never had to develop cunning or adaptability because nothing could challenge them. But humans evolved as persistence hunters on a death world." Yuki finished quietly. "We learned to kill things bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than ourselves. We learned to turn disadvantages into advantages. We learned to never give up, no matter what." She looked up at the 3 alien champions. Kaleth was flexing his forearms, each movement accompanied by the sound of crystal plates shifting. Theiss floated in place, small objects continuing to orbit around her glowing form. Gorthak pounded his chest with sounds like hammer blows on an anvil. "The human appears ready," announced High Regent Vorthes. "Are our champions prepared to begin this demonstration?" All 3 alien warriors signaled their readiness. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the subtle sounds of hundreds of aliens breathing different atmospheric mixtures. "Then let the demonstration begin," declared the regent. "Show us what humans can do without their precious tools and weapons." Yuki settled into a combat stance that no alien in the chamber recognized. It was not the pose of someone preparing to defend herself. It was the stance of a predator preparing to hunt. "You wanted to see what humans are like without tools," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "You're about to learn that we are the tools. We always have been." The 3 alien champions began to move toward her, confident in their overwhelming advantages. None of them had ever fought a creature that had spent millions of years learning to kill things that should have been impossible to kill. They were about to receive an education in human warfare. The chamber filled with excited alien chatter as technical crews began preparing the combat arena. Force field generators hummed to life, creating a transparent barrier around the central floor space. Medical teams from different species wheeled in their equipment, though most seemed to be preparing for only one patient. High Regent Vortha spoke with the other alien leaders in voices too low for the humans to hear, but their body language was clear. They gestured dismissively toward Yuki while pointing respectfully at their three champions. This was not going to be a fight in their minds. This was going to be a quick lesson, followed by medical treatment for the injured human. "Look how small she is," clicked Ambassador Lothak to his fellow Kethtar representatives. "Gorthak outweighs her by at least 500 pounds. His bone density alone makes him nearly indestructible. One punch will end this demonstration immediately. The human's reflexes are too slow," sang a Lumina observer. "Thais can alter local gravity faster than human nerves can carry signals to muscles. The creature will be immobilized before she realizes the fight has begun." "Most amusing," agreed a Vorthak council member, his crystalline face clicking with laughter. "Kaleth's carapace has withstood direct hits from antimatter weapons. What could soft human hands possibly do against living diamond?" Around the chamber, more bets were being placed. The odds heavily favored the alien champions, with most estimates giving the human between 5 and 15 seconds before complete defeat. A few particularly generous aliens suggested she might last as long as 30 seconds if she ran around the arena trying to avoid her opponents. "Humans are tool users," explained Ambassador Lothak to a group of younger Kethtar who had never encountered the species before. "Remove their implements, and they become like children. They have no natural weapons, no natural armor, no special abilities. They are probably the weakest warrior species in the known galaxy." "Then why did they defeat the Dark Fleet?" asked one of the young Kethtar. "Superior numbers and advanced technology," replied Lothak confidently. "Their ships carried massive firepower, and they fought in coordinated fleets. But in individual combat without their machines, they are helpless." Meanwhile, medical teams were setting up equipment for different types of injuries. The Vorthak medical unit prepared bone-setting devices, expecting fractures from Kaleth's crushing grip. The Lumina healers arranged gravity therapy equipment for dealing with gravitational damage. The Kethtar medics simply brought heavy-duty surgical tools, assuming they would need to extract the human from whatever Gorthak accidentally did to her. None of the medical team seemed to be preparing equipment that might be needed by the alien champions. On the arena floor, Yuki continued her stretching routine. Her movements were fluid and controlled, each motion serving a specific purpose that the watching aliens did not understand. She was not just loosening muscles. She was activating muscle memory that had been built through years of training in combat techniques that predated the aliens' first ventures into space. Captain Jiwan approached her with obvious concern written across his features. "Commander, I've been studying these species' combat capabilities. Kaleth's exoskeleton is rated to withstand direct plasma cannon hits. The crystalline structure distributes impact force across his entire body. Even our heaviest military weapons barely scratch that kind of protection." Yuki nodded while continuing to roll her shoulders. "What else?" "Thais can manipulate gravity within a 50-meter radius. She can make you weigh 10 times normal, or make you weightless and helpless. She's fought in zero gravity, high gravity, variable gravity. She knows how to use physics as a weapon." And Gorthak. Bone density measurements put his skeleton at 5 times stronger than reinforced titanium. His muscle mass is proportionally greater than anything in our databases. He once punched through a starship's hull plating with his bare hands. Lieutenant Minho joined the conversation, his voice tight with worry. "Commander, these aren't just strong opponents. They're walking violations of physics compared to human limitations. Maybe we should reconsider. There's no shame in admitting that some challenges are impossible." Yuki stopped stretching and looked at both her officers. Her expression was calm, but there was something dangerous in her eyes. "Do you remember the Titan mining colony incident?" "Of course," replied Jiwan. "You were trapped in the collapsed mine shaft with no equipment, no weapons, no communication. 12 hostile aliens had you cornered in the dark. They were razor-maw predators, added Minho, each one the size of a small vehicle, with claws that could slice through mining equipment, natural armor that deflected our standard weapons, enhanced speed and reflexes. How did I get out? Asked Yuki quietly. The two officers exchanged glances. You killed all 12, said Jiwon slowly, with nothing but mining tools and determination. But Commander, these champions are not wild predators. They're trained warriors with advanced abilities. Exactly, said Yuki. Wild predators fight. On instinct. They're unpredictable and desperate. These champions have been trained, which means they fight according to patterns. They rely on their natural advantages, which means they've never learned to overcome disadvantages. They've never had to adapt or improvise because they've never faced anything that could challenge their superiority. She began removing her watch and other small pieces of equipment. Humans didn't survive on Earth by being the strongest or fastest. We survived by being the most adaptable. We learned to hunt mammoths with pointed sticks. We learned to kill predators that were designed by evolution to kill us. We turned every disadvantage into an advantage because we had no choice. Around them, alien voices continued to discuss the upcoming demonstration with amusement. They spoke about humans as if they were examining an interesting but ultimately inferior species. They analyzed human weaknesses with scientific detachment, never considering that those apparent weaknesses might hide something more dangerous. The human nervous system processes information slower than most civilized species, observed a BeforeThey scientist. Their reaction time will be insufficient to counter even basic combat techniques. Their skeletal structure is remarkably fragile, added a Kethtar medical expert. I estimate that Gorthik will need to be very careful not to accidentally kill the creature with his first strike. The human's muscle density is pathetically low, sang a Lumina combat analyst. Thighs could increase gravity around the human to double normal weight, and the creature would be unable to move effectively. But none of the aliens were studying Yuki's movements with professional combat analysis. None of them recognized the subtle signs of a predator preparing for a hunt. They saw small size and thought weakness. They saw soft skin and thought fragility. They saw the absence of natural weapons and thought helplessness. They had no idea they were looking at something that had been shaped by millions of years of learning to kill creatures that should have been impossible to kill. Final systems check. Complete, announced the arena technical crew. Force fields are active. Medical teams are standing by. Combat space is secure and ready for demonstration to begin. High Regent BeforeThey stood up from his crystal throne. Human warrior, are you prepared to demonstrate your species' capabilities without technological assistance? Yuki looked up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at her. Some showed amusement, others showed curiosity. A few showed what might have been concern for her safety. None of them showed the respect that would have been appropriate when facing a human who had been pushed to the edge. I'm ready, she said simply. The three alien champions took their positions around the arena space. Kaleth's crystalline plates shifted into combat configuration with sounds like breaking glass. Thys began floating higher, gravity starting to bend visibly around her glowing form. Gorthak pounded his chest with thunderous impacts that echoed through the chamber. Then let us begin this educational demonstration, declared High Regent BeforeThey. Show us what humans can accomplish when stripped of their tools and weapons. Yuki settled into a combat stance that looked deceptively relaxed. The alien saw a small, soft creature preparing to face three superior opponents. They expected to witness either a very brief fight or a lengthy chase as the human tried desperately to avoid the inevitable. They had no idea they were about to witness something that would be discussed in alien military academies for the next 1,000 years. The arena fell completely silent. Even the background hums of life support systems seemed to pause as hundreds of alien eyes focused on the four figures standing in the bright combat space. The force field barrier glowed faintly around them, containing what everyone expected to be a very brief demonstration. Kaleth stood to Yuki's left, his 10-foot crystalline frame gleaming under the arena lights. His four arms flexed, each movement accompanied by the sound of diamond-hard plates shifting and locking into combat position. His claws extended fully, each one capable of punching through starship hull metal. Thys floated directly in front of Yuki, her luminous body surrounded by visible gravitational distortions. Small pieces of debris from the arena floor orbited her like planets around a star. The air itself seemed to shimmer and bend where her power touched it. Gorthak positioned himself to Yuki's right, his massive gray bulk making the arena floor vibrate with each step. His bone-reinforced fists could shatter reinforced concrete. His skin was thick enough to stop most energy weapons. His eyes showed no intelligence beyond the desire to crush and destroy. The three alien champions formed a perfect triangle around the small human woman. Each one alone could defeat entire squads of armed soldiers. Together, they represented overwhelming force that no single opponent should be able to survive. They expected Yuki to show fear. They expected her to back away, to look for escape routes, to display the panic that prey animals show when cornered by predators. Instead, she did something that made several alien observers lean forward with sudden interest. She smiled. It was not a nervous smile or a brave smile, or the smile of someone trying to hide terror. It was the smile of a predator that had just spotted something it wanted to hunt. The expression was so unexpected that it actually made Gorthak pause in his aggressive posturing. "Begin," announced High Regent Vorthas. The three alien champions moved with coordinated precision. They had fought together before and knew how to use their different abilities to support each other. This immediately began manipulating gravity around Yuki, intending to slow her movements and make her an easy target. Kaleth advanced from the left with his claws extended, planning to grab and crush. Gorthak charged from the right like a living battering ram. It was a perfect tactical approach that should have ended the fight in seconds. No single opponent could counter attacks from three directions while also dealing with gravitational manipulation. The aliens in the viewing areas began counting down what they expected to be the final moments of the demonstration, but something went wrong with their perfect plan. Yuki moved, not the way they expected her to move. Not the way any civilized species would move when faced with overwhelming force. She didn't try to defend. She didn't try to escape. She didn't show any sign of panic or desperation. Instead, she flowed forward like water finding the easiest path, downhill. The first thing the aliens learned was that humans had evolved as persistence hunters on a world where everything was trying to kill them. While other species developed specialized abilities to survive, humans developed something far more dangerous. They developed adaptability. This expected her gravity manipulation to slow the human down or throw her off balance. She had used this technique against hundreds of opponents and it always worked. Increased gravity made enemies too heavy to move quickly. Decreased gravity made them helpless and floating. But Yuki had fought in variable gravity conditions her entire military career. She had learned to adapt her movement and balance to changing gravitational fields during combat operations on asteroids, space stations, and planets with unusual physics. As this began to increase gravity around her, Yuki shifted her stance and used the increased weight to accelerate her forward momentum instead of fighting against it. Kaleth moved to intercept her with confident precision. His crystalline claws were extended and ready to grab the small human. His diamond-hard exoskeleton was locked into combat configuration. He had used this same approach to defeat thousands of opponents over 3 centuries of fighting. But Yuki wasn't moving toward him the way opponents usually moved. She wasn't charging straight ahead or trying to circle around his reach. Instead, she was flowing like liquid, her path constantly changing in small ways that made it impossible to predict exactly where she would be in the next second. Gorthak's charge should have been unstoppable. 8 feet of solid bone and muscle, moving at full speed, could smash through reinforced barriers. No opponent had ever simply absorbed the impact of his charging attack and remained standing. But Yuki wasn't planning to absorb the impact, or remain standing in the same place. The 3 alien champions converged on the space where she had been standing, their attacks perfectly coordinated and devastatingly powerful. Their combined assault could have destroyed a small building or punched through starship armor. Instead, they hit empty air. Yuki was no longer where they expected her to be. She had moved in a direction that shouldn't have been possible given the gravitational field, the positioning of the attacks, and the limited space available in the arena. She had moved up. Using Gorthak's own charging momentum and the gravitational distortion from This's power, Yuki had launched herself into the air above the convergence point. For a brief moment, she hung suspended above the three alien champions, looking down at their surprised faces. The watching aliens gasped in various languages. This was not how the demonstration was supposed to go. The human should have been crushed or captured by now. Instead, she was moving in ways that defied their understanding of combat physics. Impossible, breathed High Regent Vorthes. How did she escape that coordinated attack? But Yuki wasn't trying to escape. As she began to fall back toward the arena floor, her expression remained calm and focused. She wasn't showing the desperation of prey trying to avoid predators. She was showing the concentration of a hunter who had just positioned herself exactly where she wanted to be. The three alien champions were looking up at her with confusion, replacing their earlier confidence. They had never encountered an opponent who used their own attacks against them. They had never fought something that turned disadvantages into advantages. Yuki landed lightly behind Thys, who was still floating and trying to re-establish her gravitational control. The Lumina warrior began to turn, her glowing form beginning to rotate toward this unexpected threat. She was fast. Her energy manipulation abilities gave her reflexes that were superior to most biological species. Under normal circumstances, she could react and defend against almost any attack, but these weren't normal circumstances, and Yuki wasn't almost any opponent. As Thys began to turn, Yuki was already moving again. Not with the desperate speed of someone trying to land a lucky blow, but with the precise timing of someone who understood exactly how her opponent's abilities worked and exactly how to counter them. The chamber full of aliens watched with growing amazement as the small human warrior began to demonstrate why her species had survived and thrived in a galaxy full of creatures that should have been able to destroy them easily. The real fight was about to begin. Time seemed to slow down in the arena as Yuki moved with lethal precision. The hundreds of alien observers leaned forward in their seats, suddenly realizing that this demonstration was not going the way anyone had expected. Thys was still turning when Yuki reached her. The Lumina warrior's glowing form rotated with fluid grace, her gravitational field beginning to shift and focus on this new threat. She had never been approached from behind before because most opponents couldn't move fast enough or smart enough to get into that position. But Yuki had spent her entire military career learning to fight opponents who were faster, stronger, and better equipped than humans. She had learned to use their own advantages against them. She had learned to turn superior abilities into fatal weaknesses. Thys's gravitational manipulation required concentration and focus. The power flowed from her core consciousness through her energy-based nervous system to create the complex field, distortions that made her so dangerous. It was an elegant and powerful ability that had never been successfully countered in thousands of years of Lumina warfare. Yuki's palm strike hit Thys at the exact point where her gravitational field was strongest. The impact wasn't particularly hard by human combat standards. It wouldn't have seriously injured a human opponent. But Thys wasn't human, and her entire combat system was based on maintaining perfect control over complex energy patterns. The palm strike created a feedback loop in her gravitational field. The controlled distortion of space-time that she had been maintaining suddenly became chaotic and unpredictable. Instead of bending gravity to her will, she was caught in a gravitational storm of her own creation. Thys's glowing form flickered and dimmed as her concentration shattered. The gravitational field collapsed inward on itself, creating a brief moment of intense spatial distortion that stunned her nervous system and sent her crashing to the arena floor. The watching aliens gasped in shock. Thys had been defeated, but not through superior strength or speed. She had been defeated by someone who understood her abilities better than she did and knew exactly how to turn them against her. "Impossible," whispered a Lumina observer. "No one can disrupt our gravitational control like that." But Yuki was already moving toward her next target. Kaleth had recovered from his surprise and was turning to face her with all four arms extended. His crystalline exoskeleton gleamed under the arena lights, each plate perfectly positioned to deflect or absorb any attack. "Human," he said in his grinding voice, "you have shown cleverness, but cleverness cannot break diamond." Kaleth had never been physically defeated in combat. His exoskeleton had withstood plasma cannon fire, antimatter explosions, and the focused attacks of dozens of opponents. The crystalline structure was perfectly designed to distribute impact force across his entire body. No single point could be damaged enough to create a significant weakness. Yuki circled him slowly, her eyes studying the way his plates shifted and moved. She had fought armored opponents before, but never one with this level of protection. However, she had learned long ago that every defense had a weakness. The trick was finding it and exploiting it faster than the opponent could adapt. Kaleth lunged forward with two of his arms, his claws extended to grab and crush. His movement was perfectly coordinated, using his superior reach and strength to maximum advantage. The attack should have been impossible to avoid in the limited space of the arena. But Yuki didn't try to avoid it. Instead, she moved directly toward Kaleth, dropping low and sliding under his grabbing arms. As she passed beneath him, she struck upward with her elbow. The impact hit the junction between two of Kaleth's exoskeleton plates. It was a point that was normally protected by overlapping crystal surfaces, but Yuki's sliding approach had put her in position to strike from an angle that no opponent had ever attacked before. The sound of cracking crystal filled the arena. Kaleth's exoskeleton was indeed nearly indestructible, but it was made of many separate plates that fitted together in complex patterns. Those plates had to be able to move and flex to allow Kaleth to move his body. That meant there were joints, and joints were always potential weak points. Yuki's elbow strike hadn't broken through the crystal plates. Instead, it had damaged the connection points between plates. The perfectly distributed force absorption system suddenly had a flaw that made the entire structure less stable. Kaleth roared in pain and surprise as his left side began to malfunction. The crystal plates were shifting incorrectly, creating gaps in his protection and limiting his mobility. For the first time in 3 centuries of combat, his perfect armor had been compromised. He stumbled and fell heavily to the arena floor, his damaged exoskeleton unable to support his massive weight properly. Around the chamber, BeforeThey observers sat in stunned silence. Their greatest champion had been defeated not through brute force, but through precise knowledge of exactly where and how to strike. But there was still BeforeThey. The Kethtar berserker had been moving to flank Yuki while she dealt with Kaleth. His bone-reinforced body was built for direct assault, and he had been planning to crush her while she was distracted with the other opponents. Now he found himself facing her alone, with his 2 allies down and medical teams already moving toward them. His simple mind struggled to understand how this small human had defeated 2 superior opponents so quickly. "You used tricks," BeforeThey rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. "Tricks will not work on BeforeThey. BeforeThey too strong. BeforeThey too hard. BeforeThey crush you now." He charged with devastating force, his massive fists swinging in attacks that could shatter stone. His bone-reinforced skeleton made him nearly indestructible. His muscle mass was proportionally greater than any creature the humans had ever encountered. His simple brain knew only one tactic: close distance and crush the enemy. Yuki watched him approach with the same calm expression she had maintained throughout the fight. BeforeThey was the most physically powerful opponent, but he was also the most predictable. His entire fighting style was based on overwhelming physical advantage. He had never learned subtlety or technique because he had never needed them. As BeforeThey reached her, his massive fist swinging down in an attack that could have crushed a vehicle, Yuki moved with timing so precise that it seemed impossible. She stepped aside at exactly the right moment, caught BeforeThey's extended arm and used his own charging momentum to redirect his attack. Instead of crushing her, his devastating punch was guided directly into the arena wall. The impact was tremendous. Reinforced metal crumpled and buckled under the force of BeforeThey's misdirected attack. The sound echoed through the chamber like an explosion. But BeforeThey's incredibly dense bones, which had never been broken, suddenly encountered a force greater than they were designed to withstand. His own strength, amplified by his charging momentum and redirected by Yuki's precise technique, created stresses that even his enhanced skeleton couldn't absorb. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the stunned chamber. BeforeThey's roar of pain was cut short as the feedback from his shattered hand sent shockwaves through his nervous system. He collapsed to the arena floor, his incredible strength finally turned against him. The arena fell completely silent. 3 alien champions, each representing the pinnacle of their species' combat abilities, lay defeated on the floor. The small, human woman stood among them, barely breathing hard, her uniform not even significantly wrinkled. The demonstration was over. It had lasted exactly 2.7 seconds by the station's chronometer. But the real lesson was just beginning. The Galactic Council chamber had never been this quiet. Hundreds of beings from 12 different species sat in complete silence, staring down at the arena floor where their understanding of the universe had just been shattered. 3 of the galaxy's greatest warriors lay unconscious on the metal floor. Theis's glowing form flickered weakly as medical teams worked to stabilize her gravitational field disruption. Kaleth's crystal exoskeleton sparked and clicked as damage control systems tried to repair the compromised plate connections. Gorthak lay motionless, his massive frame finally still after a lifetime of unstoppable violence. And in the center of it all stood Commander Yuki, calmly putting her military jacket back on as if she had just finished a routine training exercise. Thais, silence stretched for nearly a full minute. No alien in the chamber seemed capable of finding words for what they had just witnessed. Every assumption they had made about human capabilities had been destroyed in less than 3 seconds of combat. Finally, High Regent BeforeThey managed to speak. His crystalline voice cracked slightly as he formed the words, How is this possible, Yuki?" Looked up at the hundreds of staring faces, her expression calm and professional. "You asked what humans are like without our tools and weapons. The answer is simple. We become what we always were underneath those tools. We become the apex predators that survived on one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy." She gestured toward the 3 fallen champions. "Your warriors are impressive. They have abilities that individual humans can never match. But they've never had to learn what we learned. They've never had to adapt or overcome because their natural gifts made them superior to everything else they encountered." Ambassador. Lothak leaned forward in his section, his thick gray features showing confusion and something that might have been fear. "But Gorthak's bones have never been broken. His skeleton is 5 times stronger than your metals." "Bones break when force is applied correctly," Yuki replied simply. "I didn't try to be stronger than Gorthak. I used his own strength against him. That's what humans do. We turn our opponent's advantages into weaknesses." A Lumina observer's musical voice carried across the chamber. "Thais has mastered gravitational manipulation for centuries. Her control was perfect. Perfect control becomes a perfect weakness when someone understands how to disrupt it," Yuki said. "Humans have been fighting gravity since we first climbed trees to escape predators. We've learned to work with it, against it, and around it. Your champion's power was impressive but predictable." High Regent BeforeThey's diamond features reflected the arena lights as he processed this information. "And Kaleth's exoskeleton. It has withstood plasma cannons and antimatter weapons. Armor has joints," Yuki stated matter-of-factly. "Joints have weak points. No defense is perfect, and humans have spent thousands of years learning to find the flaws in every kind of protection. Your champion's armor was nearly indestructible, but nearly isn't good enough when you're fighting someone who specializes in finding the weak points in impossible defenses." Lieutenant Minho and Captain Jiwon approached their commander, both wearing expressions of professional pride mixed with concern for her safety. Medical scanners showed that Yuki had sustained no significant injuries during the encounter. "Commander," said Jiwon quietly, "you were holding back, weren't you?" "Of course," Yuki replied without hesitation. The goal was to demonstrate human combat capability, not to kill 3 beings who were simply following orders. If I had wanted to cause permanent damage, this fight would have ended very differently. The alien medical teams worked frantically around the fallen champions. Their equipment hummed and beeped as they tried to understand injuries that their databases had no records of. None of their champions had ever been defeated in this manner before. "Thais will recover fully," reported the chief Lumina medic, her voice filled with bewilderment. "But her gravitational control systems were disrupted in a way we have never seen. It will take time for her neural pathways to re-establish proper field manipulation. Kaleth's exoskeleton can be repaired, added the Vorthak medical team leader. But the damage was inflicted with surgical precision. Whoever struck him understood our crystal matrix technology better than most of our own engineers. Gorthak's bones will heal, rumbled the Kethtar physician. But 3 of them were fractured in ways that should not be possible given his bone density. The force vectors required to create these injuries suggest impossible leverage and timing. Around the chamber, the alien observers began to whisper among themselves. The conversations were quiet but intense as each species tried to process what they had witnessed and what it meant for their understanding of human capabilities. "They are not just tool users," said one Vorthak representative to another. "The human demonstrated combat knowledge that goes far beyond simple technology dependence. Their physical limitations are real," observed a Lumina analyst, "but they have learned to work within those limitations in ways we never considered possible." "Most disturbing," agreed a Kethtar military advisor. "If one human without weapons can defeat our 3 greatest champions, what could their armed forces accomplish in actual warfare?" High Regent Vorthes stood slowly from his crystal throne, his diamond features reflecting the arena lights in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. When he spoke, his voice carried throughout the chamber, with perfect clarity. "Commander Yuki of the Human Alliance," he said formally. "We owe you and your species an apology. We invited you here believing that we understood what humans were capable of. We thought we were offering membership to a primitive species that might serve as useful allies in support roles." He gestured toward the arena where medical teams were still working on the fallen champions. "Instead, we have learned that we were speaking to representatives of what may be the most dangerous warrior species in the known galaxy." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber from multiple species. The casual dismissal and amusement that had filled the air earlier had been completely replaced by respectful attention and careful consideration. "Your demonstration has answered our questions about human combat effectiveness without firearms," continued the Regent, "but it has raised many new questions about what your species might be capable of with proper equipment and support." Ambassador Lothak heaved his massive gray bulk upright in his section. "The Kethtar Confederation formally withdraws all previous statements about human military inadequacy. We request detailed information about human combat training methods and tactical development programs." "The Lumina Collective seconds this request," sang a harmonious voice from the floating observers. "Our combat analysts wish to study human movement techniques and gravitational adaptation strategies." "The Vorthak Unity agrees," added another, crystalline voice. "We would like to arrange exchanges of military knowledge and joint training exercises." Similar requests came from all 12 species represented in the chamber. The beings who had been mocking human weakness minutes earlier were now competing to establish military cooperation agreements with the species they had just learned to fear and respect. Yuki listened to the flood of requests with the same calm expression she had maintained throughout the demonstration. When the voices finally quieted, she spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "Humans have one rule about sharing our military knowledge," she said. "We only teach our techniques to allies who will use them to protect innocent lives and defend against genuine threats. We do not train aggressors or conquerors." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from each species. "If you want to learn what humans know about warfare, you need to understand what we fight for. We don't fight because we enjoy violence or because we want to prove our superiority. We fight because sometimes fighting is the only way to protect the things we care about." High Regent Vorthus nodded slowly, his crystalline features showing what might have been newfound respect. "The Galactic Council formally votes to accept the Human Alliance as a full member of our military coalition. All previous conditions and probationary periods are hereby waived." The vote was unanimous across all 12 species. What had begun as a demonstration of human weakness had become a display of exactly why humanity deserved to stand as equals among the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. As the session concluded and the various species began to file out of the chamber, Lieutenant Minho approached his commander with a question that had been bothering him throughout the encounter. "Commander, how did you know exactly where to strike each opponent?" Their weak points weren't obvious, and you had never fought their species before. Yuki finished putting on her boots and looked up at her subordinate with a slight smile. Every warrior species in this galaxy developed their abilities by being the strongest thing on their home world. They never had to learn to fight superior opponents because they never encountered any. She gestured toward the arena where the last of the medical equipment was being cleared away. But humans evolved on a world where everything was bigger, stronger, faster, or more dangerous than we were. We learned to study our opponents, find their weaknesses, and exploit those weaknesses with perfect timing and precision. We became the ultimate generalists because we had to be. Captain G1 joined them, shaking his